What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are building a Circle of the Land Druid, and this is the ultimate in too many choices technology. There are so many options of how we can do this that this was a really tough build to come up with. I have several builds that almost came to be, which of course will be in the honorable mentions at the end, but let's go ahead and take a look at what we decided on today. But before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people and help us to reach our goal of 2,000 by the end of this year. We can do it, but I need your help. And of course, you can change your mind at any time. It's free. Why not, right? And of course, once you've done that, click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded and share the video with your friends. The Circle of the Land Druid is one of the most customizable subclasses in D&D, allowing you to pick a specific land that you hail from as kind of your identity, right? You get to adopt a number of spells depending on where you are from. And this gives you a lot of different ways that you can build this and where it can fill a lot of different roles. Now we are going to make it fill a role that typically druids do not like filling. And is this the most optimized way to build this? Probably not, but is it fun? Yes, and that's the whole point of today, is to have fun. So we are not out here to min-max. We are here to make a fun build that you will enjoy playing at late levels. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. Starting off, of course, is our race, and we are going to go with a very boring option of variant human. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking, variant human, it's very vanilla, everybody does it. Listen, I need so many feats on this build. It's ridiculous. So I need to get started now and not put it off. If I don't take a feat now, I'm never going to get an ASI throughout the entirety of this build. That's how many feats I want. It's kind of dumb, but I need it. So you'll see why here in a minute, but I need a lot of feats. So we're going to go ahead here at level 1 and take Polearm Master. So we're going to be using our stick primarily as our damage dealing weapon. The thing is, yes, we get wild shape here. However, we don't get any buffs with it as a Circle of the Land Druid. So as this scales up, as we get to higher and higher level, wild shape is really going to become obsolete. Even with the buffs that we get, it's not going to keep up with what's out there. So basically it is nice for giving yourself a bunch of temporary HP, but outside of that, it's kind of just a temporary sponge of HP. That's all we're going to really be using it for on this build, and then maybe for scouting things. But otherwise, we're actually not going to be using wild shape for the way that it is originally intended. So just be aware of that here. We're going to be the not really wild shaping druid. So it is what it is. You'll see what we use it for later. As far as our stats go, of course, we are using our modified standard array as we always do on this channel, which is a 17, 15, 13, 12, 10, and 8. If your table uses point buy or rolled stats, regular standard array, or some other method that's out there, great, good for you. Use that method and just adapt what I have chosen here to your method. So whatever I prioritize is my top 3, that's probably what you should prioritize. Whatever I don't prioritize as the bottom 3, probably don't worry so much about and just put those at the bottom. So that's kind of how I handle this. Yes, my stats might look different than yours, but the function is still there. So here is what I went with today: a 17 in wisdom, 15 constitution, 13 dexterity, 12 strength, 10 charisma, 8 intelligence. Very standard. No surprises with that one. We're not doing any kind of funky multi-classing that makes us have to use a different casting stat or anything like that. None of that today. Pretty simple as far as that goes. As far as our 2+1s from our racial, we're going to go ahead and put those in wisdom and dexterity. So that way we have an 18 wisdom, which is a great start, and a 14 in dexterity, so that we can get that +2 bonus on medium armor. Of course, non-metal, unless your DM allows you to wear it, then good for you. Good job. As far as equipment goes, some non-metal medium armor would be great. We are not starting with druids, so it is possible. So just try to get yourself the best armor that you can get in the medium armor category and just use that. If you could get heavy armor, consider it. I probably wouldn't, but you know, if you find a purple worm out there and want to harvest its shell, it being super thick and difficult to get through, see if you can craft some armor out of it, and then maybe that can be considered some heavy armor for later. You'll have proficiency, but I'm not going to assume that we have that. I'm going to assume medium armor with the +2 dex bonus. And of course, take a quarterstaff and use that as your druidic focus. And finally, a wooden shield is also really good just to help out our AC. With all that out of the way, let's start taking some levels. So at level 1, we are actually not a druid. We would be someone that is probably very interested in nature and how it works, and is interested in finding out how to weaponize nature, I guess. But starting out, we're just probably a town guard or just some local, you know, vigilante or something that's just dealing with local crimes. We're going to start with as a fighter, which is a little weird as a druid. Yes, there are plenty of options, so it's not that weird, but it's still a little bit different to start with fighter as a druid, because typically you want to be wearing some pretty hefty armor as a fighter, but we're not going to be doing that most likely as a druid. So again, I'm just assuming medium armor. So as a fighter 1, among other things, we get proficiency in Constitution saving throws. We're going to want that because we are going to be focusing very heavily on concentration spells, and we don't want to be dropping concentration all the time because our Constitution sucks. So this is kind of a way to get around that and to help us out a lot. So definitely a necessity. And I didn't want to use a slot up in order to have to take Resilient Constitution because that's too much. I need all my other feat slots. As far as our features go, we do get a fighting style. And the fighting style isn't terribly important here. I would probably go with the dueling fighting style just because it does allow you to deal a little bit of extra damage when you are hitting with a weapon and you don't have a second one in your other hand. So that's probably what I would use. However, blind fighting is not a bad option either. We are going to be fighting within some obscured areas. So being able to have blind sight, even if it is limited, is not bad. So that's also a good option, but we really won't be using this until like level 10. So that's why I could recommend taking something like the dueling, and then maybe later if you wanted to take the blind fighting style, we will have a chance later on to swap these. So maybe take this one now and swap out blinding fighting later. It might not be a bad option. So we also get Second Wind, which gives us a great little bonus action heal. Definitely very useful. And we will be coming back to fighter in just a little bit. But I want to go ahead and move on to Druid. I think it's very important to go ahead and get our progression going as quickly as possible. So we're just going to take one dip. We started out as a local guard or whatever, and our interest came early. And so we're going to go ahead and start taking Druid levels now. At Druid 1, we get Druidic and Spellcasting. So Druidic is our secret language that only druids can understand. It can either be spoken or it can be left in sticks or mud or whatever you want to do. But it's a cool little thing that only druids get. If you know, you know. And then you also get spellcasting, of course. I'm just going to name some of my favorites for spells here. Of course, you can swap your spells out daily. So any spell that I list there, if you can't fit it all in for one day, swap it out and try them out the next day and see what you like. As far as cantrips go, I would recommend things like Druidcraft, Guidance, Shape Water, Shillelagh, and Thornwhip. Shillelagh is a necessity, and actually so is Thornwhip. Both of these are incredibly handy. Of course, Shillelagh being able to allow us to hit enemies with our stick and use wisdom instead of our strength or dexterity, which is very nice because we do not have the points to put into those stats. So we're going to focus solely on wisdom. And Thornwhip can allow you to pull people in towards you, which will be very handy later on once we get our strategy going, even if it is very late level. So definitely go ahead and grab those now. It is fantastic. As far as first level spells, Absorb Elements is going to be nice. If we're going to be outside of Wild Shape most of the time, having this reactionary defensive spell is going to be really good for us. Cure Wounds, Entangle, Fairy Fire, Goodberry, and Healing Word are also fantastic options to take. At Druid 2, we get Wild Shape, but like I said, we're not really going to be using it all that much on this build. I would use it for if you really need to do some scouting, or if you really need to get in somewhere that you can't get into because you're, you know, a human. If you need to get into a small area, then you use it, but otherwise I probably wouldn't use it for this. Instead, I would use it for Wild Companion. This is an optional feature introduced in Tasha's, but like I said, I allow these at my table. A lot of DMs are allowing this now since Tasha's been out for a while. But basically it allows you to create a familiar. So we do not have to go searching for the Find Familiar spell, which is good. It is limited in the amount of time, but it does scale pretty well. It's a number of hours equal to half your druid level. So this is what we're going to be using most of the time. We're going to have a temporary owl friend all the time. And this owl friend is going to fly down, use the help action, and then use its flyby feature in order to not take attacks of opportunity and go up in the air. And hopefully your DM won't be a jerk and keep shooting your owl out of the air all the time. On top of this, we get bonus cantrip, which I've already accounted for here. So we already have that 5th cantrip on there. We also get natural recovery, which is a somewhat problematically worded feature, like what we talked about in Tuesday's video. I'll link to that up in the iCard above. It just says during a short rest, you can recover spell slots instead of when a short rest ends, like arcane recovery does. Talk to your DM and make sure your DM wants you to finish the short rest. And it's not just going to be a matter of, oh, I start a short rest, I'm done. Oh, it broke. I did some jumping jacks, it's broken. Oh no, but I got my spell slots back. Make sure your DM is or is not going to allow you to get through that very specific rules as written loophole. I personally don't think it reads like that, but I can see how people can read it like that. It's just a little strange. And then we also get our circle spells. So here's where we make the big decision. We have to choose amongst all 8 of these spell lists, and each of them can really lead us down a different path depending on which one we choose to hail from. Personally, I want to go with the Underdark. The Underdark, while probably not being the absolute best spell list on this list, I do think it's quite good, and it provides us with one crucial spell that we get late in life, and we're going to be using that as our focus. So yes, this build is a late level kind of thing. It's kind of a survive, or if you start late level, then this is a great build for this. But yeah, we're going for a specific spell. We're kind of building around this, and it's going to be a really fun concept when we get there. Until then, though, we are, of course, going with Druid 3. No features, but we do get our 2nd level spells. We get things like Spider Climb, which we could already do as a spider. And we get Web, though. Web is a great spell. All of your friends are going to appreciate you restraining people in all of the stickiness, which is great. Bark Skin is an okay choice here, but you're probably going to have enough armor to where it's not going to be a factor. So if your AC is already above 16, forget about this one. Enlarge Reduce is going to be nice, especially since we are using our stick in melee. This is going to give us a little bit of extra damage. And since we have Polearm Master, remember we have that butt end action for our bonus action that we can hit people with. And so this could also help with both of those attacks, which is really good. On top of this, Flame Blade is not a bad option either. This would do 3d6 fire damage. And so this is not a bad use of a spell slot. Yes, it's costly, but I mean, the damage is good. And so this is definitely one to consider over your Shillelagh weapon. This will be outdated after a while, but for now, it's actually going to be beating your quarterstaff in damage. So if you have the spell slot to spare, I would use it for this. If not, just keep doing Shillelagh, but Shillelagh will end up passing this up in later levels once we get there. So just hang on, we'll get there eventually. Heat Metal, which is a great one. Of course, you can always cast Heat Metal and then transform into something that has a burrowing speed and just hide underground until they fry. It's very violent, but it does work. Lesser Restoration, which is always a must-have. You really can't leave home without that one. Moonbeam, great concentration spell. Pass Without Trace, and of course Spike Growth. Can't go wrong with any of those. Druid 4, we go ahead and get an ASI or a feat for the first time, and yes, I talked about how I need all these feats and I need all these things, but you know what? The main priority is going to be maxing out our wisdom. So I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to a 20 and cap that off, which feels really good. And we also get wild shape improvement here, so we can now swim, which is nice. If we deal with some water, then we have appropriate things. But a lot of those water spells that we already can cast a lot of water spells in case that happens. So, you know, if there's a fight on the surface, then we can just kind of walk on the surface with water walk. If we need to breathe underwater, we're fine. Like it's not a huge deal if we have to deal with water. It's just another thing we got to figure out. At Druid 5, we get no features, but we get 3rd level spells, and we get Gaseous Form and Stinking Cloud for free. Both very nice spells. Gaseous Form especially. I really like that one on this build actually a lot. It gives us a lot more utility and just safety that I really like. We also get things like Erupting Earth, Revivify, and Elemental Weapon with an asterisk because it depends on whether or not something is weak to fire or at least neutral, because at this point you still are probably better off casting Flame Blade, in which case I would not take Elemental Weapon. However, if something is resistant, I would be using Shillelagh and then adding on Elemental Weapon to it. So it just depends on which one you want. Elemental Weapon is not that much damage for a 3rd level spell, and that's the only thing. So it's with a big asterisk. So just, you know, use caution with that one. At Druid 6, we get Land Stride, which is great. We now can just run over difficult terrain like it's nothing, and we have advantage on getting out of plants, and if plants are trying to mess with us, we can just kind of shrug it off, and so that's good. That's really nice. It can definitely come in handy depending on the campaign. At Druid 7, no features, but we do get 4th level spells, and we get things like Greater Invisibility and Stone Shape. Greater Invisibility, of course, is fantastic because you're now invisible, and you can make attacks, and you can do all of those things while invisible, which gives you advantage on your attacks as long as they can't see you, which is really good, and they have disadvantage against you. That is a fantastic defensive feature that just comes with this spell. So I probably would be using this spell a lot right now, at least as long as your spell slots can handle it. And so now you can be switching to Shillelagh if you really want to. But I think that it is a fantastic spell. Along with this, we get things like Charm Monster, Dominate Beast, Fire Shield, Grasping Vine, Polymorph, and Wall of Fire. All amazing options in their own right, especially those last two. Those are all really good, and you should definitely use those because you're a druid. Why not use them? At Druid 8, we get an ASI or a feat, and I'm just going to tell you, we're not taking any more ASIs for the rest of the video, and that's tough, right? I definitely love having them, but we're spread really thin with needing a lot of feats, and so we're taking feats the rest of the way. So spoilers, not spoilers, there you go. At this level, I'm looking for ways to possibly boost my damage, right? And there are several ways that we can do this, but the most useful way I can think of is a particular spell, a particular cantrip that will help us out with our melee damage and create a bit of a sticky situation here in a couple of levels. And so we are going to take Magic Initiate, which is a little strange to take, seeing how we have plenty of spells to choose from, but we do need to dip into another class's list here. So what we're going to do is we are going to look to the sorcerer list, and we're going to, number 1, take Booming Blade. Booming Blade, of course, works great with Shillelagh in order to cause a little bit of extra damage on the initial hit now that it has scaled a little bit, and it also deals damage if they move afterwards. So we're getting ready to start a bit of a cool strategy where if you stand still, you take damage. If you move, you take damage. And so we're basically putting everybody in a really bad situation, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Booming Blade covers for half of it, and we're getting ready to get the other half of it now. So this is going to be really, really fun. And of course, Booming Blade is going to scale more and more, and this is where it ends up outpacing the Flame Blade. So this really helps with that. As far as other spells, they really don't matter. I just needed Booming Blade, and some of the other spell lists really didn't help me out all that much. So things like Mage Hand are really good as far as having another cantrip, and things like Disguise Self are a good first level spell. Of course, if you wanted to go for the wizard list and grab something like Silvery Barbs or Shield, you could. It's only once per day, so I don't know if it's worth the feat slot just to be able to cast one of those spells once per day. I would rather do something that has a little bit of a longer lasting effect, but they could save your life depending on when you use them. So definitely consider them, but I think Disguise Self is probably going to be a little bit more useful in the long run, at least as far as spells that you could take here. We also get our other wild shape improvement here, so we can of course fly now, and that's great for scouting purposes and that sort of thing. I think it's great. Again, we're not really using it all that much. Our best option is really the giant vulture, and that is going to very quickly become outmoded. So I'm just going to assume we're not doing that. I'm assuming that we are using our owl friend to gain advantage on all of our hits, at least most of them, which we're going to be able to only do one hit here in just a minute when we fix things up here in just a second. But we're going to go ahead and take Druid 9 here though, and we finally get 5th level spells. It took this long to get to this moment, and boy, it's worth it though. We get Cloudkill and Insect Plague. Cloudkill is what we have been waiting for. Cloudkill is a poisonous gas ball that that you throw out, and doesn't matter if you hold your breath, doesn't matter what you do, you're going to take a bunch of poison damage, which, yes, poison is not the best type of damage out there. I get it. But this spell is super fun. It deals a really good amount of damage, and it can stick around for a really long time. So with some clever placement, we can make this deal a ton of damage, and that is kind of what we're going for. But I'll explain that here in just a second. We also get things like Cone of Cold, Grazer Restoration, Mass Cure Wounds, and Scrying. At Druid 10, we get Nature's Ward, and this makes us immune to poison and disease, as well as being immune to Charm and Frighten against elementals and Fae. Not that we really care all that much, unless your campaign deals with that a lot, but probably not. Okay, so here's what it is. We are immune to poison and disease, right? This means that we can just walk into our Cloudkill and be unaffected, which is really good. Meaning, we run in and we whack somebody and you hit them with the Booming Blade. Then they are either going to take the Booming Blade if they move, or they're going to take Cloudkill again if they start their turn in it the next time. They're already going to take it if they're within it, but then if they go to leave, they're going to take Booming Blade. If they stay, they take Cloudkill next turn if they stay in it. So it's becoming a bit of a catch-22, where they are going to take a bunch of damage either way, and there's nothing they can do about it. And I love that. It helps you to cover your tracks with it being pretty obscured. It's just fantastic. And I absolutely love this combination, and it's only possible through the Underdark version of this. So that is really, really cool. How can we make it better though? These are the questions that I'm asking myself. Number one, the easiest way to do it is to Action Surge. And so you better believe we're going back to Fighter 2 and get Action Surge. This would allow us to cast Booming Blade twice in a turn, which is really, really good. And of course, you still have your bonus action, of course, if you're whacking with Shillelagh, and then you can just turn around and hit with that butt action and deal a decent amount of damage, because it's not too bad, right? It's really not that bad of damage, especially given that you are just racking it on, right? You hit with the Booming Blade and then turn around and hit him again, right? You don't have advantage on the second hit because you only get advantage on the first one because of the help action, unless you've done something else to it or you have a friend who's laid down like a fairy fire or something. But overall, you're still going to be hitting reliably, and it's going to be dealing quite a bit of damage, which is really good. Just be careful to not kill your friends, right? At Fighter 3, yeah, we're keeping going though. We get to choose our subclass, and our subclass here is actually going to be the Rune Knight. The Rune Knight is a really fun take on the fighter. It is not the best fighter in my opinion, but it's pretty close, and it gives us a number of really awesome options. Number one, we get bonus proficiencies. Whatever. We get Rune Carver though. Rune Carver is awesome, and the reason Rune Carver is awesome is because we get to choose 2 runes. Each rune gets a passive version and an active version of each of them, and honestly, we only want 2 of them. The other 2 we really don't need. And number 1 is the Frost rune, which makes a ton of sense because it talks about us being one with nature, right? It's fantastic. So we get a bonus to our concentration checks here. We get a bonus to checks for Constitution, which is really, really nice. So that's another boost, and that is the active thing. We also get a number of passive things, which are fine, but we also are going to take the Fire rune, which makes sense with all the fire stuff we've gotten already. And the Fire rune allows us to deal, you guessed it, extra damage. Now there are these little fiery shackles that could stay on. It's not reliable in the least. They're probably going to break out of it first or second time at most. So I'm not considering this a reliable source of damage turn after turn. It might happen a couple of times to a very low level enemy who probably won't survive very long anyway. So don't get too excited about the fire rune sticking around, but it is still nice to be able to tack on a little bit of extra damage on top of what you're already doing. And then of course you always get Giant's Might, so you can now grow and be even bigger than you were before. And this doesn't include the enlarge reduce type of bonus, and you deal extra damage on top of that, which is really, really cool. So yeah, there's a number of benefits for Giant's Might. You get a bonus to strength things, which is good because we have a bad strength, and we deal extra damage, and it's fantastic. I love just the flavor of this, and it's just super helpful for what it is we're trying to do. Fighter 4, yeah, we're still going. At Fighter 4, I know we are delaying our spells by a lot, and I know that everybody says, you know, just go straight Druid the whole way through, but you know what? We're here for fun. Right? And so extra fighter levels are going to give us some really fun things. And that's what I'm going with. So here at Fighter 4, we of course get an ASI or a feat. And I said that it became a catch-22 when you had to make the choice of whether to stay or to leave. Well, now you're not going to get the choice because we're taking Sentinel. Sentinel will lock people down within your Cloudkill, so they take the hit from your attack, which is not Booming Blade boosted, but still, they're still locked in, and they still have to take that damage next turn because they can't move. That's kind of gross, and I love it. So yeah, Sentinel is kind of huge here to be able to keep people stuck in your Cloudkill, to keep on racking up that damage every turn, and it can very quickly kill people. It's quite strong. I love that a lot. And of course, Fighter 5, we get extra attack. Again, we do not get the bonus from the help action more than once per turn, but still we're hitting a bunch of times. And this is just the ability to deal a bunch of damage. Now, obviously you cannot do Booming Blade more than once unless you have action surged, but you could whack 2 things with a Shillelagh, then action surge, whack 2 more things with a Shillelagh, which is good. I mean, it's great, right? Being able to deal quite a bit of damage, and you're just running around in this just fog, and all of your friends just hear everybody getting whacked with a stick and just screaming in pain and coughing up their lungs, and it's just a great scene, and I absolutely love the visual of this. Now, finally, we're going to go back to Druid, and we're going to stick here the rest of the way, just in time for, basically, we're at tier 4 already, which is crazy that we're already here. And but I feel like we've gotten so much just out of these 2 classes. It's just so fun. At Druid 11, we of course get 6th level spells. Things like Heal are really good. Sunbeam, although not flavorful, is a good spell. If we're from the Underdark, then we probably don't want to take it, but you know, if you want to take it, go for it. Druid 12, final ASI or feat for this build. We have been sitting on an odd number constitution since the beginning, so we're going to fix it with the Crusher feat. The Crusher feat, of course, gives us a +1 to either strength or constitution, and so we're going to boost constitution, and it also allows us to knock people 5 feet away from us. So what this does is now we can knock people 5 feet away from us, and they are now locked down in either the Cloudkill, or they can try to move out of the way and take the Booming Blade damage. Then you put yourself in range of someone else, and if they try to leave, then you sentinel them down. So you're creating a really destructive way to just lock enemies down in a very small area. You're the 1-person wrecking crew, and it's really fun to watch. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's going to be super fun to be able to do these things. And of course, Crusher gives you other benefits as well, but the main one being to get them out so that you're not taking attacks of opportunity when you're putting them in that catch-22 situation. At Druid 13, we of course get no features, but we get 7th level spells, and Draconic Transformation is my favorite one from this list. It's so fun to be able to transform. Of course, you would be doing this instead of Cloudkill, but you got to mix it up sometimes, right? We also get Firestorm and Symbol, also great uses here. At Druid 14, we get Nature Sanctuary, which is nice, right? Being able to force certain creatures to have to make a wisdom saving throw when they go to try to hit you. again, it's limited. And of course, we're at level 19. How many beasts and plants are you fighting at this level? Probably like 0, I would imagine, unless it's an absolutely massive horde of like T-Rexes. But even then, I don't see this happening all that much, so I wouldn't get too excited about that feature. And then at Druid 15, we get no features, but we get 8th level spells with Animal Shapes, Earthquake, Feeble Mind, and the very flavorful Incendiary Cloud. So that is all for today's build. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Next up, honorable mentions, but let me know what you think of the build down below. I think it's a fun take. It definitely takes a while to get off the ground, but that's what happens when you rely on a 5th level spell. But yeah, once we hit that 5th level spell, we were kind of hitting stuff one level after the other. I mean, it all kind of happened really quickly between levels 10 and 15. So it's definitely more suited for that kind of a level of campaign. Definitely better for late level, but it's still super fun. I think this build is a lot of fun to play. As far as honorable mentions go, there are quite a few actually. For other classes, I would recommend things like the Tempest Cleric mixed with the Mountain Terrain. This, of course, would give you access to the Channel Divinity that allows you to maximize lightning damage. And of course you get Lightning Bolt, so you can use that and deal a ton of damage, which is always really good. The Fathomless Warlock mixed with the Coast Terrain is also really cool for your watery type campaigns. You get a lot of really good stuff there, and Fathomless just makes so much sense to mix with that. And of course, we've mixed Warlock with Druid before. We actually mixed Warlock with Druid and Bard a couple of weeks ago. I'll put that up in the icon above for you to check out. Really cool build, really fun. As far as if you're going for just a straight build, I would probably go with the Grassland. That is probably your best overall option. You do get access to Haste, which is an amazing spell, and I wish that we got it for Underdark, but we don't. And so we're just we're making do with what we got. So I think it's really good. It's definitely worth looking at. And finally, some rogue levels would make a whole lot of sense here. It'd be weird trying to split this up because I definitely would not have taken nearly as many levels of fighter, if any at all, for going rogue. But I do think it can definitely work of having sneak attack. You would have to probably change your weapon in order to have a finesse weapon, but that's totally fine. At that point, we would have had to mess with our ASIs and all that stuff too. So it's a little different, but I think that this build works best in the way that it currently is, personally. As far as other races go, the Firbolg is always a great option when it comes to druids and clerics. You have the ability to disguise self just innately, which is good. So we could have taken a different spell for our magic initiate. And you also get some limited invisibility, which could hold you over until you get greater invisibility, which is really good as well. And the Monsters of the Multiverse Goblin, which is one of my new favorite races for druids, to be honest. I think it's absolutely fantastic being able to just disengage as a bonus action as your racial feature. That's really handy, and I definitely would use that all the time. And as far as our feats go that we almost went with, Warcaster, of course. That's kind of the elephant in the room, to be able to cast all these spells while you're holding things in both hands. Of course, if you're wanting to have a free hand, you may have to put your shield away or put your stick away or whatever it is you want to do. So that can cause some problems, but I just did not have room for it, unfortunately. And the other one was the mobile feat. The mobile feat, of course, gives you a lot more versatility in movement and gives you some better speed, which is also really nice. We're going to be trying to zip around the battlefield, and this would definitely allow us to do that. So that is all for today's build. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought down below. Next week, we are talking about the Circle of the Moon, and we're going to see if it truly eclipses all of the other druids, like what a lot of people say. We'll find out next week. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.